поговорити.
Hello. We have a lot of speakers today. We have a very balanced team of the speakers representing both the members of parliament and civil society and the experts, which permits us to hold this wholesale, I would say, discussion, multi-layered discussion. And this discussion is dedicated to the issues related to the concepts called here in Ukraine as Russkiy Mir, the Russian world. I'm glad to turn the floor over now to our speakers. And if we go alphabetically, we have Solomiia Bobrovska, who is going to join us online. Serhii Herasymchuk, the Deputy Executive Director and Director of the Program of Regional Initiatives. Mr. Oleg Dunda, the member of the Parliament of Ukraine from Sluga Narodu party. We are expecting very presently Ms. Tsintsadze to join us, who is now an MP from the European Solidarity Party. Violeta Moskalu, the philosophy doctor and the founder of the foundation Global Ukraine. Mykyta Poturaiev, the member of the parliament from the party of Sluga Narodu. My name is Oleksandra Tsekhanovska. I'm the chair or the leader of the group of the analysis of hybrid what we call the hybrid threats of the Ukrainian or Ukraine Media Center. So I would ask our distinguished speakers, who, as I have already pointed out, represent both the MP, the Parliament, and the experts and the civil society, to speak succinctly so that we leave some time for questions and answers. And I'm sure that many of you would like, or at least some of you would like to comment or add, or comment on or add to the words of and remarks of some of the speakers. There is the foundation called Russkiy Mir, and it is founded and headed by Vyacheslav Nikonov, who has the the Russkiy Center in 50 regions, and that include also Donetsk and Lugansk, parts of Donetsk and Lugansk oblasts, formerly of Ukraine. And the formula of their activity is related to the soft power as they see it, and with the participation of Evgeny Primakov Center, we consider this something threatening. And here I would like to turn the floor over to Mr. Oleksandra Chalyi, one of our participants, who is a member of the board of the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Thank you. I'm grateful for this opportunity for an opportunity to speak, and I'd like to start by saying that our today's topic is an important one. It's related to one of the aspects of our information security, and it is very positive in my view that as an aspect of security of the security of Ukraine, this issue is being raised now by the Ukraine Crisis Media Center. And it's also in the focus of attention of the Parliament of Ukraine, the evidence of which is the presence here of a number of MPs, and the fact that Ukrainian authorities including governmental agencies and the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, are paying closer and closer attention to this issue. And for the people who are working on this topic in a non-governmental sector, they have been involved in these activities since 1914. That was the work initiated then, aimed at countering information fakes. And I would like to say that when we then, in 2014, established this Ukraine Crisis Media Center, let me remind you that that was a period when Crimea went away, so to say, from under the control of Ukrainian authorities. And at that time there were already some myths in the information sphere that we tried to counter, like the little green man. And since that time we have covered a long path. We have already developed a number of instruments for this work. But let me point out one aspect. Why are we paying attention to this same issue now? As a former diplomat who had been working, or who was working for a long time, both in Russia and in some Western countries, I'd like to say that the Russian Federation tried to use soft power in its different manifestations, using, for example, the Russian Orthodox Church, and there have been a number of initiatives. But 2014 showed that all the instruments employed by Russia, they failed, and Russia had to use the, so to say, the argument of last resort, which was the use of force. And this, for me, is a symbol of the fact that Russia has passed to using some other instruments. Now we have this line of delimitation between where Ukrainian troops are deployed in the eastern part, and on the other part of that line there are the local militias who do not want to return under Ukrainian control. And therefore we came to the conclusion that in addition to the tanks and artillery systems and missiles that we have there, we needed also to enhance our soft power. And use it as an instrument for in that conflict that is there. Speaking about Russia, we need to understand, or one needs to understand rather, that from Russia some narratives are coming that are not only fakes, but some of them, in my view, are simply not true. And it's not now the struggle among the nuances, so to say, of different assessments of different aspects. It's now more large scale. We now hear the opinions expressed directly by the President of the Russian Federation. So we are speaking about the policy of the government. And respectively, here in Ukraine, we should also try and employ all the instruments available to us. So let me also say about my personal experience in struggling against those instruments employed by the Russian Federation. I'd start with my general impression, and I'd like to say that today Russia as our opponent, with whom we are fighting, Russia has made a lot, several steps, or a number of steps rather, for strengthening their soft power instruments. Ukraine now seems to be better ready for countering these instruments of soft power used by the Russian Federation. And Ukraine has gained the experience that probably we can say no other country, at least in Europe, has. And so Ukraine should do its best in order to counter these information threats and soft power threats from Russia. Thank you, Mr. Chalyi, as a person that a person who has gained a lot of experience in countering these narratives coming from the Russian Federation. Significant part of those narratives are now getting more focused on different parts of society. And therefore we come now to this aspect of what are these narratives and how they are transmitted, so to say, to different audiences. And now let me turn the floor over to speak more in detail about that to Mr. Mykyta Poturaiev. Well, I would like to, so to say, relay this discussion that was initiated so vividly by Mr. Valerii, and tell that when we speak about Russkiy Mir, we need to point out that Russkiy Mir, the Russian world, is not only about fakes, only some hoaxes. The Russkiy Mir is some sort of, design or something that is much more complex and includes cultural dimension, historical dimension, and the other dimensions. In this regard, I would like to refer you to an example that is probably well known to many of you. It's a novel, well known, written in Russian, but by an author whom we consider Ukrainian, Nikolai Gogol, Taras Bulba. And if we take Taras Bulba, for example, if we take a movie produced by an ethnic Ukrainian, Bortko, we look at this feature film, we can interpret this film within our cultural matrix to the benefit of our traditions, of our history, and so on. But significant aspects of this film are interpreted by us as mere propaganda. And Mr. Valerii was right when he said that this return, so to say, to these instruments of soft power should not be underestimated. We should not repeat the Soviet times mistake when, for example, the generals of the German army, of the Nazi army, were misrepresented in the Soviet movies like some, stupid or incompetent persons. What we are witnessing now is an expansion of Russian cultural values into the countries, first of all, that they consider their, if we may say, primary goal, like Ukraine, the Baltic countries, Poland, and the other, I would say, countries of Southeastern Europe. And we have, all of us, we have seen that Netflix started, transmit or starting showing the movie Brat 2, and there we can see that the Nazi collaborator was there changed for Bandrits or some other definition for the Stepan Bandera, Ukrainian pro-Nazi leader and collaborationist. The term used for the members of his armed units who supported the Nazis during the war. We can consider this change a victory for Ukraine. But certainly we understand that when we speak about Chekhov, Pushkin, or Tolstoy, it's one thing. They were produced within the imperial context, but that is one thing. And today we have in Russia the movies produced and showing the work of the police and the military and so on, and this we cannot perceive as culture. And if we hope that the Russians will continue only to produce Anna Karenina or the War and Peace, probably they will not limit themselves to only these productions. And the world today understands that Russkiy Mir is menacing not only Ukraine by its expansion. I want to say that this concept or this project is expansionist, and it is aimed at undermining all the values all around the world, and I'm not sure that we'll be able to tackle this issue by bans and prohibitions. I'm not sure that this is going to be effective, especially in our today's digital world, and certainly we are not talking here about our capability, or indeed the whole Western world, for example, Western world's capability to construct some sort of a firewall to restrict the influx of these works of cinema of literature and so on, because I consider a lot of the larger part of these modern works in Russia to contain some propaganda, and we Ukraine should restrict the access to these works of art or cinema or literature, because it's a threat to us. It's a poison, in my view, and the situation is now different from the one we had in the 70s or the 80s, when in the Soviet Union they were producing the series about the threat of Western militarism. So let us compare this situation to modern day. Western countries were not buying similar movies from the former Soviet Union, and so they should not buy the Russian movies today. And when I started discussing this topic with some of my Western colleagues, some of them, many of them felt somewhat uneasy. And the regime that there is today in Russia is can be portrayed as a fascist regime, and it should it's the attitude to it should be different. It should be something like to an authoritarian regime. Therefore, I think that getting back to the topic of how to counter the influence of Russia, we should use, in my view, every opportunity, as every bullet in a cartridge that we can use for our weapons. And we should continue trying to struggle against the Russkiy Mir concept as the concept that should be compared to fascism. And I have to leave you now because I'm running out of time for my participation in today's discussion here. I need to leave and to go back to the Parliament of Ukraine. Well, thank you, Mr. Mykyta, for your participation. It's a pity that you are leaving, because I'm sure that there were some questions to you from the audience, from the journalists present here. But I'm glad, on the other hand, that Ms. Klympush-Tsintsadze has joined us. And here, in continuing our discussion, I would like to say that there are different instruments, as we have already pointed out, different instruments employed by the Russian Federation in their attempts to change the understanding of history as we have it now here in Ukraine. And if we speak about the territory of Ukraine, we know that some of the centers of the foundation Russkiy Mir that were in the southeastern part of Ukraine, they could be comparable to the Novorossiya project, which is it was said that it was another project of the Russian Federation. So the floor is yours, Miss Ivanna Klympush-Tsintsadze. Thank you, says Miss Klympush-Tsintsadze. I'm grateful for this opportunity to uh, speak here at this meeting. Why I'm coming from a meeting, or rather from the meeting with some French MPs that visited our parliament. And we were trying to transmit to them, to turn over to them also this idea of the challenge that Russia's policy towards Ukraine poses. When we speak or speaking about the Russkiy Mir, we need to first of all determine or define what we are talking about, because in different countries there are different contexts, and so the influence or the attempts to exert the influence is also different. And we should take into account the Islamic context of some of the countries and the other political, ideological, historical contexts of different countries. But when we speak about Russkiy Mir here in Ukraine, we should say that, for example, our understanding has changed because previously our understanding was that Russkiy Mir was there where there were Russian speakers. Today we have changed our understanding. And we might say that if there are some fissures in some societies, it is Russkiy Mir is trying to somehow use these fissures and that the Russian Federation is trying to use this influence in the interests of Russia. So we should understand probably Russkiy Mir more as the something that corresponds to the interests of Russia. And therefore, we should speak about the forms that it gains here in Ukraine. We should watch this with the understanding that this is a challenge, this is a menace, and we need to look for some opportunities to answer that challenge. Russia today, in its present day form and with its today's leaders, it has not abandoned the imperial ideas, and they do not consider Russia as a fully fledged country without this territory that is the territory former of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, and now of just Ukraine. And so These are different aspects of the Russkiy Mir, and inside this country we should think about some system of national resilience. Never mind that it might sound, a little bit pompous to somebody, but still, when we speak about different political issues, the politics of our country, we should understand that Ukraine used to be, the Soviet Ukraine, which where the man-made hunger was organized by the Communist Party of Ukraine, and so these things they are different, continue to be the points of controversy, and they should be taken into account by modern day Ukraine authorities. It seemed to us that after that open attack by the Russian Federation in 2014, we managed to counter some of the manifestations of the Russkiy Mir, and it seemed to us that we could even start, teaching the whole world about how to counter these hybrid threats. But it seems that we still do not know everything that we might know in order to protect our country better. And so the lessons learned should be a priority issue for us, and after we learn the lessons, we might try to put forward some other ideas about how to best counter this idea of the Russian world in the Ukraine. And we should also take into consideration the fact that some of the business activities should be construed, some of the business projects should also be construed within the political dimension as a tool for interference. And for example, when we speak about the Northern Stream project, a pipeline project. Regrettably, not everybody perceives that in such context or under such a perspective that we have here in Ukraine. And that project, let me remind you, is the project of transporting natural gas directly to Germany, bypassing Ukraine. And we should probably try to enhance somehow this perception of this project as very detrimental to Ukraine. Thank you, says Ms. Tsekhanovska. Let me say that in promoting this concept, the Kremlin tries to somehow disunite us. We should get better united, and therefore we decided to hold this round table in order to strengthen this struggle, this unified, we can say, struggle. And Mr. Dunda here, he is an expert on these issues too. And let me turn the floor over to you. Thank you, Ms. Oleksandra. Let me draw your attention to a number of uh, ideas that have already been expressed in the course of our discussion. Um, I entirely agree with Mr. Valerii, with Ms. Tsintsadze. Um, I have, let me say that I have been working as a public, as a civil servant for the last year and a half within the system of Ukraine's civil service. And I have come, or I have developed an impression that within the civil service of Ukraine, a lot of people are ready to cooperate with Russia. In case tomorrow, for example, Ukraine is reunited with Russia again, many of them are thinking of what would happen to them. But I'd like to say that we have resisted since 2015 to this Russkiy Mir because we do not consider ourselves a part of that Russian world, and let me say that even the opinion polls 2 years ago or 3 years ago, even in some of the eastern towns like Mariupol, people are not do not seem to be favorably treating this choice of going together, going forward together with Russia. When we need to understand that when the Russian TV produce their content for the TV broadcasts, what these productions they do not seem to be well taken, well perceived by different audiences here in Ukraine, at least some aspects. When, for example, there are some forceful actions, the police is shown or something, and that strengthens my idea that there is this difference of perceptions, and we need to catalyze, so to say, to accelerate this process. And here I agree with Mykyta Poturaiev, who spoke before. And I heard earlier today in one of my discussions that very important was for people's attitude to life, work culture, and literature. So in order to promote Ukraine as political nation, we should strengthen this feeling that we are all Ukrainians, even if we are of different ethnic origins. We have some Georgians living in Ukraine, some Jewish people, and we need to make them all, feel themselves Ukrainian. So we need to promote Ukrainsky світ, the Ukrainian world, as a means to countering the Russian world. And regrettably, we are not doing enough in this respect. For these 4 or 5 years, for the last 4 or 5 years, we have been mainly busy with, redividing the frequencies for different broadcasters. We need to work more on the contents and to promote, first of all, the contents that enhance, strengthen these feelings of belonging to Ukrainian political nation, and then we'll have less eagerness to watch Russian TV channels, and that's the way to do it. If at the initial stage we need to force to do it, by force, let's do it by force, because we should present it as an issue of national security, and as this is a national security issue, the instruments of strength should be, or could be, and should be used. When we speak about different audiences for the propaganda promoting Russkiy Mir, let me say that we are not talking about the suburbs of Paris as a part of Russkiy Mir. Nobody is doing that and imagining that, and we understand that here in Ukraine the situation is different historically, and we need to clearly understand that this concept is used here in Ukraine. And Miss Violeta, for example, who recently visited Mali in Africa, where about a month ago there was a coup d'etat. There seems to be a Russian, trace, and probably the Russian participation there, if any, was also aimed at gaining some influence that they could somehow use then in, trade-offs vis-a-vis Ukraine. Some people are saying that the main instrument, one of the main instruments for the promotion of this concept of the Russian world is the Russia Today TV channel. It's a channel that is viewed by very few people, and the content that they broadcast is not interesting to the audiences in the majority of the countries where it's broadcast. And so Russia Today tries to influence different audiences, and in working with those audiences, they somehow relay this message that Ukraine is support to Ukraine is should not be a priority. Um, and there was a scandal recently in one of the Ukrainian diaspora organizations. In some country, there was a scandal because some members were excluded, expelled rather, from these associations because they seemed to be also, sympathetic to these ideas of the Russian world. And so we need here in Ukraine, inside the country, to work more, to do more in the cultural aspect, and in the other countries we should work more with the people who acknowledge themselves as the members of Ukrainian diaspora. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dunda. And I am grateful to all the participants that they stay within their time slots because we'll have some time for the questions and answers part. And before I turn the floor over to Miss Bobrovska, let me say that I would say that there is some one of the recent trends is some certain weaponization, I would even say, of this idea of Russkiy Mir, and we know that, for example, through Facebook, there are exchanges of discussions, of opinions, and they discuss, for example, the issues with the Russian language in the Baltic countries, where it's being limited by the local authorities, or the discussion of the assessments in some countries of the Second World War legacy. But now let me turn the floor over to our another speaker who's joining us online. Ms. Solomiia, welcome. I know that you have already had your discussion, but I'd like to say that probably one of those niches, if I may say so, that where even the Institute of the national strategic national research should participate. When we speak about this, promotion of the Russkiy Mir concept, I recall the words, so to say, and ideas of Mr. Gerasimov, who in 2013, being the chief of the general staff of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, he and if you were reading attentively the document signed by Mr. Putin, there were the concepts of support of the development and of the national minorities. And here, if we speak about the Russkiy Mir, it's also it also includes the people who speak Russian language and the the protection of the Russian language speakers was also an important aspect when there was that escalation in 2014. Um, and I cannot but pay attention to the issue of Russian propaganda, and because today there was some decision taken, a decision taken by the government, or couldn't be heard. So it was a decision regarding the teaching in Russian language to in the academic institutions, probably to the foreign students who study in Ukraine. And in my view, it is that decision was regrettable. Speaking broader, it's when we speak about different parts of Ukraine, in the western part, where the broadcast, TV broadcast from Belarus can be watched by the local population. These these broadcasts probably influence the local audiences. That's what the lady meant. She's speaking very hectically and very confused speech. Speaking about Ukraine's efforts, we have Ukrainian propaganda channel Dom, which is aimed at the population of the territories that went out of Ukraine's control. Dom was supposed to be in charge of this foreign broadcasting in Russian language. And I must regrettably say that it has no audience. Very few people watch it. So, when a year ago there was a decision taken to start satellite broadcasting for the largest Ukrainian TV channels, so that, for example, obviously to cover the larger audiences, technically it seems to have become more complicated. And in my view, in the work with the school students, we are shown that more and more people in the Crimea refuse to study in Ukrainian language or learn it. And this same trend is also typical for the territories that formerly belonged to the Ukrainian Socialist Republic in Donetsk and Lugansk and Ukraine, and recently left Ukraine. When we speak about business, about political activists, and here we must mention that it's all corrupt, all these political activities. in this country. And the problem of underfunding of the civil service in Ukraine, that all complicates Ukraine's propaganda, especially abroad. And there is a lot of ground for us that remains to be covered. And I would like to give you an example of the Crimean platform, this discussion platform. The Russian Federation made some analogous institution, and there were the representatives from more than 30 countries, the representatives of different local authorities, regional authorities, and it was established in 2017, and it's called Krymska Agencja, and that practically was a platform to promote Russian occupation of the Crimea. That was the Crimean Peninsula was presented by Nikita Khrushchev in 1954 to the Ukrainian Federation, as we remember. Speaking about the situation in the oblasts of Ukraine, there are the obstacles to the registration of the people moving from one oblast to another, and in 2000, and when I saw a story, probably on TV, where a policeman who started speaking Romanian language to some people was threatened by them. I think that this is also a manifestation of the Russkiy Mir, and me and my colleagues, we think that the citizens of the Russian Federation who have influence and here we have, for example, some of the Russian Academy of Sciences institution still having licenses for geological work. For me, it's incomprehensible. I cannot understand what our governmental agencies are doing, what Ukrainian intelligence is doing, and how can we assist Ukrainian intelligence, and how can we counter some singers, for example, who probably she meant visit the Crimean Peninsula, which contravenes Ukrainian legislation. So we need to do more in our country. I will probably stop here. Thank you, Ms. Solomiia, for your very reasoned and well-researched commentary. And now let me turn the floor over to Ms. Violeta Moskalu. Thank you for having remained online and waiting for your turn. Uh, Thank you for giving me the floor. Can you hear me? Yes, we can hear you perfectly well. And I am in Mali, as Mr. Oleg mentioned. I'm still here. And thank you very much for your invitation to take part in this discussion. I am a management teacher, or rather a professor, probably, of the Lotharingian University in France, and I am here now working, teaching in Mali. I have always been interested in maintaining contacts among the members of the diaspora, and it has happened so that a lot of my friends they have ended up in different countries, but I still appreciate my today's position as seeing it as an opportunity to develop myself professionally, and as you know, living abroad, and when some of my friends they live in different countries, let me just outline three topics three issues that I wanted to raise. First of all, in Europe, and not only in Europe, but in Africa too, um, uh, there are different new, so to say, associations of Ukrainian diaspora, and as we felt that we were suffering from the Russian imperialism that was mentioned by some of the speakers, we decided to organize ourselves in some different organizations. And although our efforts and initiatives have not been perceived positively in all the countries and by all local authorities, but when we speak about countering Russkiy Mir, we should have our own Mir or world. And for example, Kiev, let us call it tentatively Kiev world. What is our Kiev world? How can it be, you know, how can it counter, how can it oppose the Russian world? And there are some hopes, I must say, even among the local populations who, for example, in reacting to the outrages of the Islamists in some of the countries like Mali, like some African countries, for instance, they hope that there could be some Russian military assistance to their countries so that they could resist could resist those Islamist, actions of the Islamist organizations, and when Mr. Zelensky was coming to power, there was this perception of, a new Ukrainian experience, and we tried to portray ourselves as an example. And what has been done since that time, in the last 2 years, for different human rights activists and so on. I haven't felt that a lot has been done, especially in the last 6 months. So probably some more courage is needed. You should, the people should say openly and be more vocal about their opposition to what the Kremlin does, and there should be some ideological content. Because during that time, after Euro Maidan, so the events here of 2014, when the president was overthrown here in Ukraine in 2014, this new model that has been worked out since then, it has not become, so to say, emblematic. It has not become a role model that could be promoted and could become appealing and attractive to the other countries. And here, so we should probably need more to achieve something here. And here I come to the second point, the cooperation with the diaspora organizations, or Ukrainian diaspora organizations abroad. In terms of some government policy, it does not seem to be sufficient.
Там и международных структурах.
Although we have a lot of people from Ukraine working as in different positions of intellectual work in different countries. My impression is still that the government has several organizations, diaspora organizations, as the priority organizations, and this is wrong. There are more of these organizations, and there should be better work organized also with them. And it's what is important here that these organizations, they can exert some local influence, very much like local mass media, for example. And here we have the deficit of resources. Therefore, I am appealing to you, colleagues, to the members of this Ukraine Crisis Media Center. We can be you can be used as an information channel. We can translate some media materials for you in different languages and send them to you. And I would say that we do not employ to the full extent the potential of the Ukrainians abroad, especially because a lot of them have been galvanized by by that conflict, and they feel somehow, quite active in about the need to do more in order for Ukraine. And therefore, I think these should be the priorities for the government, rather than these attempts to deprive the people who left Ukraine and stay abroad, work abroad, to deprive them of, to cancel their Ukrainian citizenship. It should not be done. The government should not cancel Ukrainian citizenship. We are proud of it. And let me tell you that in the EU countries, there is a vast number of people. Many of them have already gained their country's citizenships. But I would like to see that we are passing to a different paradigm when Ukrainian government tries to use these people as a resource as a resource for the work. You have 1 minute left, Miss Violeta. Well, speaking, systemically, in order to uh, uh, improve, somehow reorganize our work. We have tried we have been trying to network, so to say, and establish contacts with the Belarus citizens and their organizations abroad. And this cooperation seems uh, very much in the context of the problem of, fight for freedom and, similar activities. The global way, the global path to freedom. There was that initiative in which the organizations of the people from Belarus were quite active. Moldova was involved also, and Ukraine, a lot of Ukrainians. It should somehow be made more active so that we reach, let's say, a breakthrough. And today we have this situation when we do not have enough funds to make this work more active through our own efforts. Thank you, Miss Violeta. There were many proposals put forward, and in such areas as support of the diaspora, or in the information sphere, information promotion, and in the context of countering the Russkiy Mir. I know that Miss Ivanna is short of time, and so if you have something to say in conclusion, you can take the floor now. Thank you. Just as a reaction to what my colleagues have said, especially as far as the proposals that should be picked up, so to say, by the authorities, by the government, although I'm quite skeptical with regard to our today's government. Let me start by saying that we should not at least allow what has already been done by us, not to degrade. For example, the Ukrainian Cultural Foundation, as we know, they experience some difficulties. Dovzhenko Center, the Ukrainsky Institute, the Ukrainian Institute, only received enough funding for the salaries of the members of their staff. If there are no more funds for them to manufacture, so to say, their cultural product and spread it among the embassies of Ukraine, if they only have this amount of funding that covers the salaries, what this institute is working, or why is this institute working, what for? Only if we and let me add that only if we accelerate and combine our efforts can we be more successful in countering the Russkiy Mir. And we mentioned the channels of information more than once in our today's discussion. And we have already had this discussion on the political and national identity, Ukrainian national and political identity. It's within this context that the cultural product can be produced, and I would also like to support Solomia's remark or comment about this foreign broadcasting option. Again, I was quite skeptical about it. It requires a lot of resources, and first of all, or rather than doing that, my view is that we should start by producing more materials, more information about ourselves, about Ukraine. In this context, this TV channel DOM that was presented as some new idea seemed to me from its very beginning some sort of useless, absolutely useless device. There was a question about what we consider an alternative to the Russkiy Mir, what we consider let's name it Kiev Mir, the Kiev world. My answer to that is that we do not have this idea of expanding to the others our ideas, what we should spread, so to say. Probably Miss Violeta, who mentioned that, she had in mind exactly this same meaning of that notion that she put forward. And what seemed to have been less discussed, less intensely discussed in our today's meeting, the political side of this context and here I think that more work should be done with our European colleagues, especially because Russia presenting itself as anti-Nazi country and state at the same time has supported a number of right-wing organizations. I think we should use that more actively. And for the sake of discussion, I think, Mr. Oleg, reacting to your comments, we should not idealize ourselves. It seemed to us in 2014 that we started back in 2014 the process of turning Ukraine into a new political nation. My opinion is that this work has not been completed, and these fissures and the cracks, as we can say more bluntly, we still have them in our society, and we have not yet managed to overcome them. And Now, Mr. Oleg, the floor is yours for some reply if you want to make it. And then the floor will be given to Mr. Serhii, who has a lot to say too. Well, when I mentioned when I made some comments about, for example, the perceptions of the public, I did it on the basis of the opinion polls. It's not my idea, and it's not my data. It was the data that was generated by the research institutions. And let me emphasize once again the importance of the cultural aspects and products, be it cartoons or architecture or feature films or even TV products like talk show. For example, Savik Schuster show. If it corresponds to the national ideas of Ukraine, why shouldn't be promoted? And that's the way to construct our political nation, and that's our means of protection against the influence from the east, from our eastern neighbor. And the intelligence services were mentioned. I was struggling with them for several months, demanding to prohibit the visits of a number of Russian writers, I think, and the security service of Ukraine are still refusing to do that. Their job should be information operations, the propaganda operations. And here, I think, if we, as I said, Russia today is not believed by wider audiences. If we plant some stories in the local newspapers, for example, somewhere in Clermont-Ferrand, the local newspaper will be believed there. Their information will be believed. Not Russia Today's information can be understood better. And so the security service of Ukraine should be more active in this area, but they remain inactive either because of their incompetence or for some other reasons, or because they do not want to do that. And I would even go as far as say that some of the TV channels that are clearly, in favor of the state of and the government of Ukraine, they should be funded directly, and without that direct funding, their survival is impossible. It's simply impossible. Dear colleagues, it seems that we started to be a little bit aloof from the main topic of our today's discussion. Let us get to the discussion of the instruments of the Kremlin in the promotion of the Russkiy Mir in foreign countries. Let me turn the floor over to a specialist on Ukraine and Moldova, Mr. Herasymchuk. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to listen to today's discussion, despite some discrepancies and differences of views and so on. I will certainly dwell on the issue you mentioned, but let me first say a few words about the Russian foreign policy schools and what are the differences between them.
Про школу міжнародного інституціоналізму.
There is a number of schools that defense realism and the others, the aggressive realism. For example, the latter speak about the differences, ideological differences, and Mr. Herasymchuk mentions his list of differences. Some of them, continues Mr. Herasymchuk, they emphasize some domestic political differences, the others, the influence of some foreign countries. In my view, the so-called aggressive realists, they threaten to the former republics of the Soviet Union. If we speak about their attitude towards the Western European Western countries, there are the revolutionary expansionists, the people whom I call the revolutionary expansionists, who treat Western countries as negatively. Russia is being perceived by some of those schools as a Eurasian country. Some of them view the United States as the country that expands geopolitically. Why did I mention that list and these descriptions? Because it was written in 2001 by a Russian politologist, and in my view, the revolutionary expansionism was first mentioned then, and then there was a speech by Putin at the Munich Security Conference, and then there were other developments. What are the instruments that Russia is using? The first issue that, in my view, should ring the bell is the traditional values issue. In the countries where Russia tries to exert its influence, they use traditional political forces that uphold traditional values. Like in Moldova, for example, we have the party of Dodon and the communists and the Jobbik party in Hungary. President Dodon even organized a congress on traditional values in Moldova. Marine Le Pen can be mentioned as a leader of an organization that upholds traditional values. And so, in my view, we should think more about the weaponization of traditional values. The second aspect is the reference to the Soviet past, glorification of some of the periods of history of the Soviet Union. This is not quite effective in Romania. because even in the Soviet time, Romania had its quite special position in among the former socialist parties. The thing that should ring the bell is the emergence of the party AUR, that went into the parliament, emerged quite unexpectedly in the Romanian political landscape, and it speaks about the unification of all the Romanians. So, as in many other countries, we can see this convergence among the left and the right, because they are struggling for this, position of the guardians, so to say, of traditional values. Well, we should mention also the mass media, both in Moldova and in the other countries. And today, for example, Russian language was mentioned as, for example, a means of teaching foreign students. Here in Moldova, the situation is so that Russian language was termed in Moldova as the language for international communication, and in my view, it's an attempt to make the others, everybody to speak Russian or something like that. I'm not going to go into details in assessing the economic situation. The Nord Stream project was already mentioned, has been already mentioned, and let me just dwell upon some challenges that I want to mention. It's the growth of national egotism and national ethnocentrisms that the Russians are trying to use. And some countries even that we considered more resistant to the influence of the Russian Federation. And I cannot, says Mr. Herasymchuk, but mention that Russia uses the vaccine as a means of influence, and the use of this vaccine is, in my view, is an instrument. For instance, in some in one of the countries of the Eurozone, there was even the change of the government after the Sputnik vaccine was acquired from the Russian Federation. I will probably stop here, and let me say to Mr. Valerii that I agreed with all of your remarks, and here we probably the very term that you use, the soft power, in my view, should be better translated as soft force rather than soft power. Another aspect that I wanted to stress again, it's the expansionism that was mentioned by Russian politologist Tsekhanovska or the politologist Tsekhanovska in 2001, and here we can see, or here we can make reference to the Game of Thrones, where chaos was mentioned as also one of the aspects of this struggle. Let me now turn the floor over to Ms. Victoria, who will now see through the demonstration of some of the video slides, will also give more detailed explanations to what we have been discussing. Thank you, colleagues. I represent Stop Fake organization, and we have been for the last 7 years trying to analyze the information fakes, not only from Russia, but from the other countries. And as there has been a lot of interesting ideas expressed today, let me start by describing how the concept of the Russkiy Mir is presented or represented. Speaking about the narratives that we consider the most topical today, the principal one is the word victory. Here, not only the historical aspect is meant, but also today's successes and victories in different areas of life. So Russia is trying more actively now to associate itself with success stories in different walks of life. So I am not going to dwell here on the Second World War victory. That is a matter of pride in Russia. But let me say that in this same context, we can quote Mr. Putin's reference to the new types of weapons, including nuclear weapons that Russia has recently developed. And Putin warned that in terms of the possibility of the use of nuclear weapons, Putin clearly said that Russia can use nuclear weapons to protect itself, but why the nuclear weapons should be used at all, as that means the elimination, the destruction of the whole world. And here, if we remember, if we recall the documentary about the Crimean Peninsula, there were also made references to the possibility of Russia's use of nuclear weapons if attacked because of the Crimean Peninsula. So in my view, this story of and this narrative of the success of the Russian Federation in developing new nuclear weapons was added as a component of this effort to promote the Russkiy Mir. The same goes for the space research. Here you can see the photo of Elon Musk. This story mentions the family roots of Elon Musk. that his family was related to Russia. And in the Russian parliament, they even mentioned the fact that Mr. Musk's space rocket that he is going to use next month for his space flight, the majority of the components were manufactured in the Russian Federation. So it all adds, in my view, to the Russian presentation of their country as a leading country that is successful in the whole number of areas. I left out the economic aspect because I knew that there would be a very short time for me. But in the economic sphere, there's a lot of examples where Russia also is trying to demonstrate new achievements and successes. In reality, if we speak about the fakes and mispresentations, we know how it is presented and can be misrepresented. For instance, there was a number of old photographs used from the historical past of the United States of America, where there was the period of slavery. And so these photographs were used by some Russian media showing that democratic values in the United States and the attempts to teach the other countries those values should be compared to the real facts of the history of the United States when these things were done by the citizens of the United States to the black slaves. When the protests occur in some countries, the Russian media also show these protests and also show that the punishments by the authorities against the punishments of the protesters are oftentimes much more severe in the European Union countries, for instance, or in some other Western countries than in Russia. There was yesterday or the day before yesterday, there was a story about Ukraine's soccer team uniform that has Nazi slogans, and Russia protested against that. So in a story about that, it was an interesting case of that with that story. Here, let me draw your attention to this photograph. You could see the LGBT topic, for example. It's the president of Estonia with her son who put on a woman's dress. And so some of the Russian media used that for the comments as, this expansion of the LGBT values as opposed to the traditional societal values. And the values of traditional values of Russia were highlighted in this context. some critical situations have been used by the Russian media, like, for example, when the vaccines and the medical workers, medical staff arrived from Russia into Italy to help against COVID pandemic. This was also used by the Russian media, and so it was presented in the way that Mr. Putin was portrayed as a hero who was helping these countries out against the pandemic of COVID. In the United Nations, there was a discussion about the lifting of these sanctions against the Russian Federation, and there were a number of people, even the MPs of some countries, who made reference to the assistance of Russia against the COVID, and that for them was a reason to appeal to their governments to lift the sanctions. Therefore, we can say that there are different layers, so to say, different areas in which Russia is trying to use. There was a headline from an Italian newspaper, the headline of a story of one of those Italians who called on their government to asking to lift the sanctions against Russia. And here we can see a story from some of the in one of the Ukrainian media, which says that in the European Union, Russia was accused of misinformation about the vaccines that were manufactured in Western countries. And the last slide that I want to show you, summarizing what I said, it's about the mass culture. You can see here Ivan Urgant, a popular Russian showman. He in 2020 made the whole show, TV show for I think the New Year show or something like that. It included all the popular singers and show people from Italy and of Italy that were popular in Russia. And this show became even popular in Italy, not only in Russia. In that show, there was this that note sounded that Russia was a nice country, an interesting country, and that's how that is a part of cultural diplomacy, and I can call it a cultural propaganda that is rather efficient. And in New Delhi last year, I was told by the colleagues, that the colleagues in India, by the colleagues in India, that they knew very little about Ukraine. That's what I want to bring to your attention. And a second aspect of that is I have a son, and he sings songs, and it's a challenge for me to find some Ukrainian songs that he wants to sing, but there are no Ukrainian modern songs about Ukrainian victories. And there are scores of Russian songs, but there is no Ukrainian song that could be used for that purpose. In my view, it's very important to have something like that, some positive narratives about Ukraine. This could be an efficient instrument in countering the influence from Russian Federation. A lot has been said, thank you colleagues, a lot has been said today, a lot of interesting ideas has been expressed, and let me turn the floor over again to Mr. Chalyi. Well, I am not going to speak at length this time. The content that was mentioned by Violeta Moskalu, the content can be taken from the Ukrainian Ukraine Crisis Media Center. It's been done for quite some time already, so it's entirely available for use also by the Ukrainian citizens abroad. About the lack of a song, Ukrainian song about victory, and there is not going to be a song about the victory. It's my personal idea that a song about the victory in the Second World War will hardly ever appear because Ukrainians, for Ukraine, the Second World War was a tragedy, and a lot of Ukrainians, as we know, they fought together with the Nazis against the Soviet army, and we have not yet come to positive understanding of those people who considered, or at least presented themselves as the fighters against both the Soviets and the Germans. But still, we have some positive examples in the history of Ukraine, and maybe about the other parts of that history, there might be some new songs. And let me say also, let me share with you my impression that I developed as a result of our today's discussion. I should agree that soft power, yes, might be not an entirely accurate term. It's today some of the more specific even Soviet period, Stalin period values and episodes of historical episodes are used in Russia, in modern day Russia, like for example the Stalin as the head of the country during the Second World War, when the Soviet Union won the war against Nazi Germany. So it's not Lermontov or Pushkin, but Stalin, which can prompt us to say that this can be portrayed as an imperialist policy or imperialist trend. We have not yet discussed any offensive steps that we may take. We have only been discussing the, so to say, the defense against Russkiy Mir. why it is so. Um, Since 2014, the areas which left Ukraine, and these are the parts of the former Donetsk and Lugansk oblasts and the Crimean Peninsula. These were the areas where what we can describe as Ukrainian identity was lacking. And Putin didn't manage to enter the other areas, and Putin was counting on the population in the other areas meeting him with flowers. It couldn't happen, or it didn't happen, and it couldn't happen. Wherever there is Ukrainian language and Ukrainian historical memory, and where there were people who were doing something for the sovereignty of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, there will be no acceptance of and no, so to say, progress of Russia. So Ukrainian political nation should, its creation should become a key and an attempt today to use the arguments of pragmatic actions like let us reestablish some Russian schools. I think that it's going to be against Ukraine. And as I told, wherever there is Ukrainian language and wherever the Ukrainian identity, national identity is fostered somehow, there will be no progress of the Russian Federation. There have been some rumors that the COVID virus there was a fake that about the virus, COVID virus, somehow originating from some medical laboratories in Ukraine, and that was a fake. And in conclusion, I would say that I'm certain that we are at the stage of developing the mechanisms for the protection, for the struggle against the influence of Russia, and for the promotion, advertisement and promotion of Ukrainian narratives. The funding, the other resources could be abundant, but also what is also important is professionalism, competence. And this is important for those who are in the parliament, in the government, and if there is understanding of that, this work will be supported much better financially and so on. So far, this counteraction against the influence of the Russkiy Mir is limited to the active part of the population of Ukraine. So thank you very much once again for an opportunity to speak at this discussion. And let me wish you further successes in your work of fending off the influence of the Russkiy Mir. Thank you, Mr. Chalyi, and even thank you for having reminded us about even some um, negative and sorrowful aspects and moments and periods of our history, like, for example, the Stalin's rule period. As our roundtable started 10 to 15 minutes later than we planned, I think we still have time for several issues. I believe 3 questions at least, and brief answers. Oleg Klympush-Tsintsadze, at the previous press conference, there was the Foundation Democratic Initiatives. They quoted some new statistics showing that among the population of Ukraine, 10 to 15% share was of the people who, or the growth of the share of the citizens who believed that the conflict in Ukraine is more of a civil war. And also some of there was some growth of the share of people who believe that Russia has or is becoming more liberal, or even has become more liberal. What do you think of that? Well, I must tell you that some opinion polls and some researches are done for different purposes, and some of the media, they can have their own goals. I would like to tell you that for the last 2 or 3 years there has been a trend among the respondents who indicated their readiness to somehow satisfy the demands of Russia. So I think we can speak about Ukrainian society as of today as a society that supports the movement towards the West, towards Western Europe, essentially, and according to the data of our research, in the western part of Ukraine, the share of the people who are eager to continue the European integration process, it even has reached 50%. And at the same time, there is also the larger share of the citizens of this country who are in favor of closer cooperation with the European Union. Vlada Tsurkan from Dom TV channel. A lot has been said today about the Russian propaganda machine and the tools and means of countering it. I have a question. What is the level of funding of that propaganda machine in the Russian Federation and compare it to the funding of the TV channel Dom. At least just the figures. Well, it's not about funding, it's about content and subsequently the ratings of TV channels. What I was saying was that we have a lot of TV channels, a lot of broadcasters, and what they need is better content, the content that would promote Ukraine. And speaking about the Dom channel or Suspilne TV, they have enjoyed a lot of investments. The funds from the national budget, and their ratings are still low. So, relatively speaking, if we invest billions and bring the level of technical equipment of your channel to the level that now has only the Prямой channel, I'm not sure that the ratings and the audiences could grow or would grow. Answering your question, I think in the Russian Federation, the media have the financial support at the level of about $400 million annually. And there was, well, speaking about our situation, we have already mentioned those doubts that our foreign broadcasting system could somehow be established and it could be, very well funded and certainly in a time of a military conflict, also the defense spending should be a priority. Information sphere is certainly important, but defense should be first. The situation that we have should be, oriented towards the expansion of our information capacity, not narrowing it down to some few well-funded broadcasters. The strategy that we have, there is a strategy for this area, but sometimes some developments occur, and we should speak about the use of some instruments that should be just used more efficiently. We cannot create a dozen channels like yours, for example, but we can improve your work. When I was in the United States, I visited a number of TV channels. I presented our country as the one protecting the southeastern flank of Europe. We have been, we were discussing the interview of the presidents. I'm not going to dwell on that, but who else who else gives interviews these days? in the world, they expect to hear the position of the country presented by the head of state, by the head of the government. And in this context, we must say that as of today, we still are lacking cultural products and information products that could be interesting. I was personally trying to promote one of our feature films that aspired to win an Oscar. It didn't, but at least it was nominated. Therefore, that is to say that the resources that are allocated today for your work are sufficient to do your work more efficiently and better. Certainly we have problems. We have bureaucracy, bureaucratic hurdles, and you can be given some funds, but it'll take you ages, to then report all the expenses item by item and present all that to the auditing and other governmental authorities. It's the whole story in Ukraine. So in short, what should we do in order to somehow break this narrative, especially of the Soviet period, of the Soviet past? Success stories should be our Ukrainian slogan at every level. A brief remark. There was a center of countering the disinformation mentioned. They have funding. I try to cooperate with them, and I was somewhat disappointed. Very briefly, Ms. Victoria, I'm going to be very brief. For 2018, there were 52 billion rubles for these TV channels that were co-financed from the national budget by the government. Speaking about the audience, for instance, the information that I have is that the audience of the RT channel is about 900 million viewers. Is it many or few? It's for you to say. There have been no questions to Mr. Serhii, therefore let me, for the sake of promotion, mention it again that Ukrainian Prism is a source and could be a source for the content that you can be used in your work, and especially in this context of countering the promotion of the Russian world. Thank you again for your participation. It's been quite a pleasure.